Someone who adores you completely can suddenly become the person who acts like you don't exist, and there are 3 unexpected reasons why. Life throws us into confusing situations where the individual who cherishes us most transforms into someone distant and unreachable. They vanish from conversations, stop reaching out, and withdraw from the connection you once shared. You're left wondering what went wrong, questioning everything about your relationship. The confusion becomes overwhelming because their behavior contradicts everything you thought you knew about them, about the bond you shared, and about the love you believed was unshakable. I'm going to walk you through something deeply important today, an emotional exploration that reveals the 3 genuine explanations for why someone who feels intensely about you starts pulling away. As we move forward together, you may discover clarity about your own experience. You may finally understand why the person who once made you feel like the center of their universe now treats you like a stranger. And more importantly, you'll learn what this silence really means and how to navigate through it with wisdom and grace. Before we dive deep into these 3 reasons, I want you to understand something crucial. Human behavior, especially in matters of the heart, is rarely straightforward. The most confusing actions often stem from the deepest emotions. When someone pulls away, our first instinct is to assume the worst, that we've been replaced, forgotten, or never truly mattered. But reality is far more complex, far more nuanced, and often far more painful for both people involved than we initially realize. Part 1. When quiet becomes painful. Here's something you need to understand about quiet. It holds incredible weight. It can bring peace and restoration, yet it also possesses the strength to shatter you completely. When you're facing their absence, that emptiness grows heavier than any conversation ever could. Silence from someone who matters creates a void that fills itself with anxiety, doubt, and endless speculation. Your mind races through scenarios. You examine your phone compulsively, checking for messages that never arrive. You refresh conversations, hoping to see those 3 dots indicating they're typing. Messages go unanswered. Memories play on repeat like a film you can't pause. Questions multiply inside your head without mercy, each one more painful than the last. Was there a mistake I made? Have their emotions shifted? Is everything different now? Did I misread everything from the beginning? You replay every conversation, every moment, searching for clues about where things changed. You analyze their last words to you, looking for hidden meanings. You wonder if something you said was misunderstood or if something you did was misinterpreted. The uncertainty becomes its own form of torture because human beings are wired to seek explanations, to find patterns, and to make sense of our experiences. Pay attention to what I'm about to tell you. Quiet doesn't always signal abandonment. Often, it serves as a defensive barrier. The individual who values you above all others frequently becomes the one terrified of your absence. This paradox defines so many relationships. The closer someone gets to your heart, the more frightened they become of losing their place there. Terror makes humans behave in unexpected patterns. When fear takes control, logic retreats. People who would normally communicate openly suddenly go silent. Those who would typically seek connection instead create distance. Let me explain further why this happens and what's really going on beneath the surface of their silence. First explanation: their feelings overwhelm and frighten them. Yes, we're talking about terror here. Not terror directed at you or at the emotion itself, but anxiety about your potential departure, worry about failing you, and concern about inadequacy when measured against someone as significant as you. This fear operates at a primal level, triggering responses that may seem irrational to outside observers, but feel entirely logical to the person experiencing them. Grasp this powerful reality. When feelings deepen, vulnerability intensifies proportionally. Once a person recognizes your irreplaceable role in their world, their entire being trembles with uncertainty. Love, Real love strips away our protective layers and leaves us exposed. The deeper they fall, the more terrifying the potential fall becomes. Thoughts invade their consciousness relentlessly. What happens when I make mistakes? What if abandonment comes? What if someone superior appears? What if everything I offer falls short? These questions aren't occasional visitors, they're constant companions, whispering doubts during every interaction, every silence, and every moment of connection. They imagine scenarios where you discover they're not as amazing as you initially thought. They picture you, meeting someone more attractive, more successful, more emotionally available, and more everything. They convince themselves that it's only a matter of time before you realize you could do better, and rather than face that inevitable rejection, at least inevitable in their mind, they begin to preemptively protect themselves. These internal dialogues consume them from within. Rather than demonstrating increased affection, rather than communicating feelings transparently, they retreat inward. They construct emotional barriers brick by brick, wall by wall. Distance emerges not from lack of care, but from caring with such overwhelming intensity that it generates panic. The irony is devastating. They push away the very person they desperately want to hold close. Sometimes the deepest affection hides behind the thickest walls. Have you witnessed someone handling fragile glass with extreme caution because destruction terrifies them? That mirrors how they approach your emotions and the relationship itself. They avoid contact because contact feels dangerous. Responses come slowly because every word feels weighted with potential disaster. Each text message, each phone conversation, each spoken phrase feels dangerous to them, loaded with opportunities to say the wrong thing, to disappoint you, to give you a reason to leave. Every interaction represents another opportunity for loss in their perception. Their withdrawal functions as armor, protecting them from the pain they're convinced is coming. They're not disregarding you because your presence lacks meaning. Your significance overwhelms them completely. You matter so much that the possibility of losing you becomes unbearable. So they attempt to control the narrative by creating distance first. This is the cruel mathematics of fear. The more they love you, the more they fear losing you. And the more they fear losing you, the more they behave in ways that might actually push you away. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, born from insecurity, and breaking this cycle requires courage they may not yet possess. Second explanation: hidden struggles you cannot see. People who care profoundly typically shoulder their difficulties in silence. They conceal their challenges deliberately, sometimes out of pride, sometimes out of protection, and sometimes out of shame. Creating worry for you isn't their goal. Burdening you with stress contradicts their intentions. In their mind, loving you means shielding you from darkness, even when that darkness originates within themselves. Listen to this truth that escapes most people's awareness. When genuine affection exists, protection extends even to shielding you from their personal suffering. Perhaps internal battles rage within them, anxiety that wakes them at 3 in the morning, emotional collapse they hide behind forced smiles, money troubles that keep them awake with worry, household conflicts that drain their energy, self-doubt that questions their every decision, past wounds that haven't healed despite years passing, mounting responsibilities, crushing them under invisible weight, impossible standards they set for themselves, isolation that makes them feel alone even in crowds, and terror of inadequacy that whispers they'll never be enough. These struggles don't always announce themselves with obvious symptoms. Depression doesn't always look like tears and darkness. Sometimes it looks like numbness and withdrawal. Anxiety doesn't always manifest as visible panic. Sometimes it appears as avoidance and silence. Financial stress doesn't always come with complaints. Sometimes it comes with shame-induced distance. They refuse to let you witness these realities. Seeing them fractured isn't an image they want burned into your memory. Exposing vulnerability contradicts their self-image, especially if they've always presented themselves as strong, capable, and in control. They fear that showing you their struggles will change how you see them, will diminish your respect or admiration, and will give you reasons to question whether they're worthy of your love. So their response becomes withdrawal. They project indifference as a shield. Phone calls go ignored because answering means potentially breaking down. Reply times stretch longer because crafting a response that seems normal requires energy they don't have. Coldness replaces warmth, not because feelings changed, but because warmth requires emotional resources they've exhausted. Availability disappears, not because your company lacks appeal, but because they're determined to keep their internal chaos separate from your brightness. They look at you and see light, hope, positivity, everything they feel they're lacking in their current state. Staying distant feels like protection to them, protection for you from their darkness, and protection for themselves from your inevitable disappointment. They're mistaken in this belief, yet conviction drives their actions with devastating consistency. Sometimes the person maintaining distance spends nights crying alone, desperately wishing for your embrace, while simultaneously convincing themselves they don't deserve it. Sometimes outward strength masks internal fragmentation happening piece by piece, day by day. Sometimes the one creating separation wants your presence most desperately, but lacks the knowledge to request support or even the belief that they deserve it. They're fighting battles you can't see on fields you don't know exist. And in their isolated struggle, they've convinced themselves that pushing you away is an act of love rather than what it truly is, an act of fear. Third explanation, they believe you merit something superior. This reason carries the sharpest pain because it stems from genuine love twisted by insecurity. When authentic love exists, they perceive your value with crystalline clarity, more clearly than your own self-perception, more clearly than anyone else sees you. They recognize your goodness completely. Your capabilities shine brightly to them. Your inner and outer magnificence becomes obvious in ways that take their breath away. And this is where the problem begins. Then comparison begins. They measure themselves against you internally, and in their assessment, they always come up short. Mental narratives develop and strengthen. You merit someone wealthier who can provide material security and luxury. You merit someone more capable who can solve problems effortlessly. You merit someone overflowing with confidence who never doubts themselves. You merit someone who provides everything imaginable, everything they believe they cannot offer. Within their thought patterns, they persuade themselves of inadequacy. They catalogue their perceived flaws and failures. They remember every mistake they've made, every shortcoming they possess, and every way they fall short of perfection. Distance gets manufactured deliberately as they build a case for why you'd fought, be better off without them. They extract themselves from your life gradually, hoping the separation will hurt less than a sudden departure. Ignoring you becomes their version of noble sacrifice, a painful gift they give you even though you never asked for it. In their distorted perspective, they're being selfless by removing themselves from your life. They're doing you a favor by stepping aside so someone better can step in. Their heart believes this represents the correct path forward. They imagine that stepping aside prevents future pain, your pain when you eventually realize they're not good enough, and their pain when they witness that realization dawn in your eyes. They convince themselves your happiness multiplies without them weighing you down. The devastating part? You never requested flawlessness. You never asked for superhuman qualities. You never demanded transformation into someone else. You chose them, flaws and all, imperfections and all, exactly as they were. But they can't accept that choice because they can't accept themselves. Real love doesn't need perfection, it just needs presence. Your only desire was their availability, their moments, their affection, the simple, profound gift of their authentic self. Yet they remain trapped, fighting between feelings of insufficiency and loving you excessively. That internal war manifests as distance, distance transforms into silence. Silence feels identical to being disregarded, but underneath everything sits pure affection, intertwined with profound insecurity. They love you enough to sacrifice their own happiness for what they believe is yours. They just don't love themselves enough to believe they could be part of that happiness. The critical truth you must absorb. Being ignored doesn't automatically indicate absent love. It doesn't mean apathy exists. It doesn't mean emotions evaporated. It doesn't mean replacement occurred. Sometimes profound affection operates quietly, working beneath the surface in ways we can't immediately perceive. Sometimes powerful emotions generate enormous fears that eclipse rational thought. Sometimes the most faithful hearts hide behind impenetrable defenses constructed from past wounds and present insecurities. And sometimes the person avoiding you prays for your well-being more than anyone else, carries your name in their thoughts throughout their day, and wishes desperately for circumstances or courage to be different. But here's the vital question demanding your attention. What actions should you take? Should patience guide you? Should departure become your choice? Should confrontation happen? Should your own silence match theirs? These questions have no universal answers, because every situation carries unique elements, but there are principles that can guide you. The reality stands clear. You cannot repair what remains hidden. You cannot remedy what goes unexpressed. You cannot wage battles you remain unaware of. Your power is limited when the other person won't communicate their struggles, fears, or reasons for withdrawal. So, what becomes possible? You grant them space without closing your heart permanently. Space doesn't mean abandonment. It means allowing them room to breathe, to process, to work through whatever they're facing. You maintain composure without self-torture. Composure means staying grounded in your worth rather than spiraling into self-blame or desperation. You remain available without pursuit. Availability means keeping your door open while respecting that they must choose to walk through it. You practice patience without sacrificing dignity. Patience doesn't mean waiting forever in painful limbo. It means giving reasonable time while maintaining boundaries that protect your own emotional well-being. You deserve someone who shows up, who communicates, and who fights for the relationship rather than running from it. Most critically, you refuse to assume the worst possibilities. Your mind will offer countless negative explanations, but assumptions often prove wrong. Sometimes distance proves temporary, a brief withdrawal while they gather strength or clarity. Sometimes silence represents a passing phase rather than a permanent state. Sometimes love requires time to discover courage, to overcome fear, and to break through walls that took years to build. Yes, sometimes today's distant person becomes tomorrow's tearful returnee saying, "Forgiveness, please. Terror controlled me. Pain overwhelmed me. I couldn't let you witness my broken state." Sometimes they come back with clarity about their fears and readiness to face them. Sometimes they realize that pushing you away hurt more than any potential rejection ever could. But you also must protect yourself. While understanding their perspective offers comfort, it doesn't obligate you to wait indefinitely. You have the right to expect communication, effort, and presence. You have the right to walk away from a situation that continuously hurts you, regardless of the reasons behind that hurt. Understanding love alongside distance. Love doesn't always announce itself loudly with grand gestures and constant communication. Love doesn't always express itself continuously without ebb and flow. Love doesn't always arrive perfectly packaged with confidence and clarity. Sometimes love conceals itself behind fears so old they've become part of someone's identity. Sometimes love trips and stumbles over insecurities that run deeper than conscious thought. Sometimes love flees before learning permanence because staying requires vulnerability that terrifies. But authentic love always discovers the path home, even if the journey takes longer than we hope. When true affection exists beneath the fear and silence, it doesn't disappear. It waits, it persists, and it fights to resurface. Silence won't conclude the narrative if real connection exists. Distance won't erase the bond if genuine love formed its foundation. Terror won't achieve eternal victory if courage eventually finds its voice. Silence may pause affection temporarily, creating painful gaps in connection, but destruction remains impossible when love runs deep. Distance may decelerate affection, slowing its expression and visibility, but erasure cannot occur when hearts have truly touched. Terror may confuse affection, distorting its expression into behaviors that seem contradictory, but annihilation stays out of reach when authentic care exists. The heart consistently returns to where safety resides, to where it feels understood and valued. When their heart finds safety with you, when they finally recognize that your love doesn't depend on their perfection, they'll return with greater strength and clarity. They'll return, having learned that pushing away caused more pain than vulnerability ever could. Remember these words carefully as you navigate this painful experience. When someone who adores you completely starts acting like you don't exist, rejection isn't always the explanation. Sometimes disguised love appears, wearing the mask of indifference while protecting vulnerable hearts. Love attempting self-protection from anticipated pain. Love pursuing healing from wounds you didn't cause. Love striving to improve for your sake, even if the method is misguided. Forgetting you proves impossible for them when genuine connection existed. Your impact on their life, on their heart, and on their understanding of love cannot be erased by distance or time. Replacing you cannot happen easily, because what you shared was unique, irreplaceable, and profound in ways they may not fully comprehend until it's gone. Walking away from you defies simplicity because every step away feels wrong, heavy, and contrary to what their heart truly wants. When they ignore you, don't conclude that your significance disappeared or never existed. Don't let their silence rewrite the story of what you shared, diminish the moments that felt real and profound, or convince you that your perception was entirely wrong. Sometimes your importance overwhelms them completely, so completely that they don't know how to handle the weight of it, the responsibility of it, or the vulnerability it creates. If this perspective resonated with you, if these words brought clarity to confusion or comfort to pain, show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to Psychology Wisdom for more insights that transform how you understand relationships and human behavior. Remember, you deserve love that shows up consistently, that communicates through difficulties, and that chooses courage over fear. While understanding their perspective matters, protecting your own heart matters equally. May you find the wisdom to know when to wait and when to walk forward into the love you truly deserve.